The Seventh Tower by Garth Nix. Book 2, Castle, Chapter 9. Kill them! Tal heard the words as if they came from a long way off, carried on the wind. Somewhere, someone was talking about killing someone. Someone else was saying, "No, we don't know who they are." "One looks like a chosen. I say kill him, at least." "What's the point of dragging them up here if we just kill them anyway? They haven't got sunstones. They've both got normal shadows. And look at their clothes. They must be from somewhere else. Maybe they can help us." The one who wanted to kill whoever it was laughed, a bitter, mocking laugh. "Help us do what? Hide in these tunnels better? Live more miserably than we do now?" Tal managed to get one eye open a fraction and saw that the people talking were standing quite close to him. There were 3 of them. 2 boys, who couldn't be much older than he was, and another taller one who looked a bit older. He hadn't spoken. The 2 younger ones carried short, broad-bladed spears. They were all wearing dirty rags that Tal thought might once have been underfolk robes. The older one had a cap with a long black feather in it. There was an oil lamp sitting on the floor behind the 3 boys. Its light cast long shadows from all 3. Natural shadows. They were underfolk. Tal tried to order them to help him, but nothing came out. The effort needed to keep even one eyelid half open was immense. "Kill them," said the first blond boy. "Talk to them," said the second boy. Who were they talking about? Tal wanted to turn his head to see, but his neck wouldn't move either. Maybe it was all a dream. Both turned to the boy with the feather in his cap. Obviously, he had to make the decision. "Neither. We'll take them up to the top of the service levels and leave them there. They'll come round in an hour or so." "Oh, Crow," complained the blond boy. "What'll that do?" So the older boy with the feather was called Crow, thought Tal muzzily. The black feather had to be from a crow then, but the only crows in the castle were pets of very high chosen. There was an old legend that when the last crow left the castle, it would mean the end of the chosen, and the 7 towers would fall. "Unless I'm wrong, taking them up will deliver a problem to the chosen," said Crow. "Gil, go and get Clover and Ferric. We'll have to carry 'em." Tal watched Gil, the second speaker, walk out of his field of vision. Gil was a girl's name, which was odd. Unless Gil was a girl. She might be, Tal thought, watching her disappear. His one half-open eye closed and could not be reopened. Things got even more dreamlike then. He felt himself floating up from the floor as weird noises echoed all around him. Possibly they were meant to be words, but Tal couldn't get a grip on them. They kept changing shape and slipping away. Words that some unconscious part of his brain knew were up, heavy, you carry him then, became snurp and preefy and lol garly sleemwin. Nothing made sense. It was too hard. Tal fell back into total unconsciousness. When he awoke the second time, he had a moment's perfect recall of his first waking. Then it was gone, replaced by a blinding headache that stabbed him right between the eyes. He groaned and sat up, cradling his head in his hands. Then he remembered that he was tied to a ladder in the heating tunnels. Tal snatched his hands away from his eyes and looked around. He wasn't hanging off a ladder. He was lying on the floor of a hallway lit by a small sunstone in the ceiling. There was another sunstone about 10 stretches on, and another 10 stretches beyond that. They were plain white sunstones, of very little power. Something made a noise. Tal whipped around and wished he hadn't as his headache struck even more savagely. The noise was from Mila. She was sitting cross-legged behind him, slowly breathing in and out with great control. She had taken off her face mask, and her skin had a nasty greenish tinge. Tal pressed his thumbs into his temples and muttered, "What happened?" Mila let out her breath very, very slowly. "Bad air. Some people found us and carried us here. There was some talk of killing, but they didn't really want to. Lucky your shadow behaved itself. I think they would have killed you if it hadn't." "Oh," said Tal, a vague memory coming back. "I thought that was a dream. Were you awake then?" Mila looked embarrassed. She started to take in a breath as if to ignore the question, then let it out suddenly and said, "I only recovered enough to hear. I couldn't move. You should take deep, slow breaths. It will clear the bad air out of your blood." Tal nodded, but didn't change his breathing. Those people had to be renegade underfolk, and they talked about his sunstone. His hand flew to his neck. The chain with the old and the new sunstone wasn't there. He had a moment of panic before his shadow guard plucked at his sleeve, reminding him that the chain was in the secret pocket. He pulled it out and dropped it over his head with a sigh of relief. 13 sleeps. Then it's mine," Mila said, watching him check the sunstone. "We've just had 1 sleep." Tal scowled at her. Slowly, he got up and walked a little way along the corridor. Every step sent stabs of pain through his head. "Are we in your castle now?" asked Mila. She pointed at the ceiling. "There are many sunstones. Perhaps I should dig one out." "They're too small," said Tal wearily. "They only last a few months before they have to be replaced. You can't do anything with them either. They just give light." Mila shrugged. "Light is a lot in the dark." Tal sighed. From the low level of light and the whitewashed walls of the corridor, they seemed to be on one of the underfolk levels. There were lots of underfolk levels, where the servants lived and worked and farmed. But Tal didn't think of these levels as part of the real castle. When they left these levels, they would be entering the castle proper. Tal was suddenly struck by the realization that he had actually gotten back. He'd never thought beyond that, and now he didn't know what to do. What could he do? He couldn't just go home, because his enemies would find him. He couldn't go to any public places dressed the way he was. There'd be a panic, or a lot of trouble at the least. And that was just Tal. He hadn't properly thought about bringing Mila into the castle at all. He knew she was an ice carl, and what that meant. No one else would. There was no knowing how the Chosen would react. As far as they were concerned, no one lived outside the castle. No one could live outside the castle. They would think she was some kind of creature that had crossed from Aener without becoming a shadow. A free spirit. An uncontrolled spirit. That would be about the most frightening thing a Chosen could imagine. There would be white-hot rays of light and destruction, with Chosen blasting them on first sight. That's what Tal would have done if he'd encountered Mila in the castle, he knew. If she wasn't a Chosen, and wasn't an underfolk, she had to be a monster. Why would any other Chosen think differently? "Are we in your castle now?" asked Mila again. She looked around at the bare, smooth walls. There were no trophies, no horned Merwin skulls or Selski flipper-toe bones, or the captured weapons of enemies. "It's not very impressive. Your guard should have found us by now, instead of those outcasts." "Those what?" asked Tal. He hadn't been listening. He was consumed by a new fear. What if he had done the absolutely wrong thing in bringing Mila to the castle? "Outcasts," said Mila. "That's what the people who brought us here were, weren't they? People without a clan who follow the ship and live on scraps and scrapings." Tal stared at Mila. He'd never seen her so talkative before. Maybe it was something to do with the bad air. Or perhaps she was simply relieved they'd made it through the searing heat of the tunnels. "I don't know who they were," he replied. "Underfolk. Servants, but I think ones who have escaped. They must live somewhere down here." "Servants who cannot choose to leave?" asked Mila, as she got up and flexed her arms. "You mean thralls. Some clans have them, though the crones do not like it. The Far Raiders will not trade with thrall takers." "What's a thrall?" asked Tal. He hadn't heard the word before. Servants who cannot leave, said Mila. Seeing that Tal still didn't understand, she added, people who can be bought and sold. Oh, said Tal. Well, the underfolk are different. Most of them are born to be servants. Or they ended up as underfolk for good reasons. And they don't get bought and sold, just reassigned. A thrall by any other name still stinks the ship, said Mila. She emphasized this with a shrug and did 2 cartwheels along the corridor to loosen up her muscles. Tal groaned and hit his head even more forcefully. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw his shadow guard copy his action, until Mila noticed. Then it slid back to become a natural shadow once more. Tal watched it go. It was only then he realized that he wasn't as pleased to be back as he should be. He should be kissing the floor and laughing with joy. After all, he'd survived a fall of thousands of stretches from the Red Tower. He'd lived through an encounter with ice carls. He'd crossed the living sea. He'd helped kill a merwin. He'd seen the rune ship, climbed the Mountain of Light, and made it through the heatway tunnels. But he didn't feel joyful. He felt tired, as if all this was only the beginning. He'd always thought that he'd go straight to his family's rooms when he returned and see his mother. But that wasn't possible. The trouble was he didn't know what to do instead. Mila cartwheeled back, reminding him that he'd brought the particular problem she represented on himself. "What now?" asked Mila. "Do we go and meet your clan crone?" Said Tal, brightening as an idea suddenly came to him. "Not exactly, but close to it.